Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of the Simple Talk podcast. We have a legend and a friend joining us today, Tucker Richardson, formerly a player of Colgate Men's University basketball program, who just finished his career. And we're excited to have him on and, have a nice conversation. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to be here. Thanks, Sean.
No problem, man. You had a really good career, and I know a lot of times we talk about life, and I figure, right, you're a good person to have on and share some perspective on what it's like to be a high-performing college athlete in today's NCAA world, and kind of give us some insight on how that is, mentally, physically, right, and some of the things that you learn from it, right, being a successful athlete in today's culture. Obviously, why don't you just start by giving us an introduction? You as obviously a basketball player, that's a big thing you do. You as a person, and your family life, right? Just kind of paint a picture for us of who Tucker Richardson is.
Yeah, so I'm from New Jersey, and I grew up grew up in Jersey, and in high school I played at a public school called Hunter Central in Flemington, New Jersey. And for my fifth year, I ended up going to Blair Academy to do a prep year. I felt like I needed an extra year before college in terms of like recruiting and getting my body physically and mentally stronger to get ready for college. Obviously, that's where we kind of have our connection with Coach Mantegna there. So great experience there. And coming out of high school, before I got to Blair, I had mainly had one offer from Colgate, which I'm representing here. And I feel like I always think about this. I feel like I'm almost kind of lucky that I only had that one offer because I ended up accepting that before I got to Blair. I kind of, at that point, just going through my recruiting, talking to the coaches at Colgate, talking to a lot of important people in my life, it felt like that situation at Colgate, it didn't seem like I was going to find anything that much better if I kept waiting. So I was like, why don't I just commit now? And then I can go into Blair and I can just kind of focus on getting better at basketball and not worry about recruiting, not worry about like having to impress people in the gym and whatnot, which is what a lot of people go through in the fall there. And so I committed to Colgate in August, and then obviously went to Blair, and it ended up being like the best decision I could have made. Just the rest is kind of history. At that point, 4 out of 5 NCAA tournaments, which is pretty cool. That's like my biggest flex, I guess, is I got to play in 4 March Madnesses, which, I mean, you grow up as a kid and your dream is to play in 1 March Madness or just to go to the NCAA tournament. So an amazing experience. And you talked about family, and I credit so much of it to my family. I mean, I think both my parents in different ways have had such an impact on my basketball career. Like, I mean, I wouldn't even be close to the athlete I was if it weren't for my mom specifically. I remember when I was younger in like 5th or 6th grade, I was playing for a really bad AAU team. I always tell this story, and we got smacked by this other AAU team from Trenton, New Jersey. And after the game, she like goes up and starts talking to the coach of the other team, and she's like, "I need to get my son on your team." And she's always had that kind of personality where she would do whatever it meant for me to be in like the best situation possible. And me, especially as a kid, I was pretty shy, and I didn't really understand what it meant to like make myself uncomfortable and put yourself in those situations. So I would always be like, no, I don't want to do that. But it always ended up working out. And so she's always been that kind of person in my life that's pushing me. And then my dad has always been kind of like this voice of reason in my mind. And whenever I have like tough moments, especially in my basketball career, he's always there to kind of pick me up and talk me through things and just kind of like a best friend in my life. So I think family is incredibly important. The sacrifices that they had to make to get me to where I am, I try not to take it for granted. I'm sure I do at times. And yeah, so I mean, and especially as my basketball career continues, which is kind of cool. I'm sure we can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah,
I owe so much of it to them. So I think family and basketball, I mean, I think for most kids, those usually go hand in hand because of the sacrifices that parents have to make.
Yeah, I mean, just in anything in life, right? Like sacrifice, empathy, and it's so important coming from your family. I know me personally, like I wouldn't be where I'm at, right? And obviously there's other steps and places we want to go, but like you said, practicing, like being where your feet are. Like my family, like I have family, like my mom is amazing, but a lot of the people that help me are people that I call them like my adopted family, right? Like Joe's one of them. The Jesus I've known since I was a kid.
Yeah.
One of my mentors, Sean Munford, who I played high school for and coached at my public school, right? And now obviously being here at Perkiomen, working under Coach Bowdenay, you just kind of adopt people that, especially those people, right? Those people know what they're doing. So I figured, you know what, if I'm going to try to be a coach, this isn't a bad group to surround myself with until I figured myself out, right? Because when I was younger, I was immature is a polite word to say. So I had a whole village kind of help me. And even to the day, right, a lot of other people have joined. And I think, right, being humble enough to accept help, whether it's from your family, your friends, or people you just choose to allow into your life, I think it's a big life hack. And I get, obviously, hearing from what you're saying, that's something I think you adopted too. And I'm very conscious of it. I try to listen to as many people as I can, because trust me, there's a lot I need to learn and a lot of things. So I try not to have ego and pride, and just really open my ears to amazing people. And there are a lot of people that are willing to help. So that's amazing that you have a really good support system. So I guess I kind of want to start, the deep conversation, right? Obviously you were a high performing athlete at Colgate, right? I could name your stats. It'd probably take me 12 minutes, right? But the most important one, I think, is you're the winningest player in the history of Colgate basketball, right? So going into having a lot of wins in your 5 years there's obviously some form of success, dedication, drive, grit, and all that stuff that comes into it. So why don't you kind of share with the audience, right? What does a day, what does the life, right, of Tucker Richardson, as far as like being able to perform at the highest level and the work ethic that goes along with it? And then if you could kind of pair that into what you guys did at Colgate as well, and how those two meet in the middle.
Yeah, I think, part of it goes back to exactly what we were just talking about, is like surrounding yourself with successful, like-minded people. I mean, I always call myself lucky, even in high school. I think a lot of public schools, you kind of don't know what you're going to get out of like a basketball coach. And even my coach, Mike Falco at Hunter Central was a really solid, really good high school basketball coach who pushed me and kind of knew what it meant to be a college basketball player, and how to push me in that direction. And obviously Coach Mantegna at Blair Academy, just being in that program and surrounding myself with a bunch of guys who wanted to play college basketball and who wanted to win games and who are really dedicated and committed. I mean, I remember when I was at Blair, especially in the spring, actually, even after the season was over, Nico Perotta would take us, and I was like, Henry, random guys would jump in. We'd do like 6 a.m. workouts before class at Blair Academy. And I would hate them. I would hate to get up that early and do it. But then once I got to the workout, and especially after the workout, I think that's the most important thing. It's like after the workout, kind of take a second and see how you feel about yourself. You always feel really good after like an early morning workout or a tough workout. So I think being in those kind of programs and cultures kind of instilled that work ethic in me, and that winning mentality, that it's not all about numbers or about and even I think, like, in terms of getting recruited by Colgate, I probably could have waited, like I said, and gone to Blair and maybe gotten a couple more offers. But it was like, I want to go where I'm really wanted and where I can be successful and have an impact on a program that was kind of on the come up. So I would say that kind of was where my mentality was instilled, in terms of like being for the team and being for winning. And then when I got to Colgate, I was really lucky my freshman year to enter a program that was on the rise. The year before, they had been in the Patriot League Championship. They lost by like 40 to Bucknell in the championship. Bucknell was kind of like the perennial team in the Patriot League at that time. But going into that situation, a lot of those upperclassmen, at least they'd been on a team that knew what it took to get to that point. And I think that's really important. It's like knowing what it takes, knowing what you have to sacrifice and the work you have to put in, and the mentality you have to get to that point is super important. So I was really lucky to enter that program. And like I said, I had a lot of those qualities already, but being around other guys who were like that, it was kind of like, oh, wow, this is where I want to be. I want to be a part of this. And then obviously having a coaching staff that was super dedicated and committed to the team and to winning. I think that, I mean, I always tell the story. My one of my best friends from Colgate, he was my roommate my last couple of years there. He played almost no minutes in his 4-year career at Colgate. And yet he was one of the most important people to our success and to our program success. And I feel like every winning team has players like that, has guys like that it's not about the minutes. It's about, they understand what it takes to help build a culture, what it takes to win without even having to be on the court. And I think those guys are so important. And of course, those guys want to be in the game, but they realize that they can still have an impact, even if they're not on the court. And so I always respected that. And I always tried to learn from that and try to realize that I shouldn't take for granted the opportunity that I'm having at Colgate. So like I said, I think that winning kind of mentality, that work ethic just comes from surrounding myself, being lucky to surround myself with people who also had that mentality, and just trying to absorb as much as I could from these guys and learn from them. I mean, I'll mention one other person before we move on, but Will Raymond, who was he was the rookie of the year his freshman year. He was a junior when I was a freshman at Colgate, and I remember going into his senior year, he was like preseason first team. He was there was a chance he was going to be player of the year in the conference and all these things. And he ended up his senior year, he ended up scoring the least amount of points he had scored in his career. But he was defensive player of the year, whatever. I think he won. I think he was second team all league, but that didn't matter. Like, he did all the little things, all the winning plays that mattered. And he was like the most important guy on our team. And that was playing with two other guys who had one had won player of the year before and one had won that year. So it was like guys like that I just like loved and I just learned from. And I was like, I want to bring that mentality every day to this program. And I think for the most part, I was able to kind of do that and help that program.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing that I just kind of picked up from that is the 6 a.m. workouts at Blair. I like, just from a coaching and as an aspiring coach and trying to be, the best version of that I can. I just think it's so powerful, the opportunity, right, that a lot of coaches have in college as well, but I think especially at the high school level, whether it's prep, public, doesn't matter. Like, you're able to literally get into a gym every day and help mold kids and with discipline and habits, right, develop their love for the game. And then the other side of it too, right, if you abuse that power, right, you could potentially ruin a kid's joy and love for the game, and then they don't know how to work. And I just think it's super powerful. And I think when I hear you're going into a gym at 6 a.m., right, obviously you went to Blair with talent, right? Of course, you're not going there if you're not very good, but like, the fact that, I know Nico's a great guy. The fact that him and I'm sure DeJesus and obviously Mantegna at the time you were there, right, they're helping mold you as a player, but just from a habit standpoint, right? Like, the talent is the talent. You could help players get better, of course. Yeah. But I feel like those habits and that drive and that mindset, that's the stuff that really separates not just players, right? Just people in general. And obviously in what we're doing, it's basketball. So we talk, coaching X's and O's players, right? But from a life standpoint, I think the value in just being able to serve people, and we say this a lot, and I don't want to be a broken record, but just being able to serve people and seeing, right, where you came from and where you ended up, like, it was no accident, right? Obviously, you did what you had to do, of course, and it always starts there, but, right, you had a village behind you who supported you and helped you, and I also think that's very important as well. So, something I kind of wanted to talk about, right? When you were in the NCAA, right? You were in the when you made the tournament, right? You guys lost to Arkansas, Tennessee, and I'm forgetting the third one. Wisconsin and Texas. Yeah. All of them were close games, right? The Texas one kind of got away from you at the end, but the first three, I mean, I know I don't want to get super basketball here, but you guys literally played buzzer to buzzer and could easily have won every single game. And you're playing against quote unquote higher level teams, right? Power 5, better athletes, whatever. But in those games, right, obviously you're jumping up a level, right? You're having to, so I feel like when you were tested in those moments, right, whether it's mentally or physically, what's something from those big moments that as Tucker Richardson, the player and person, you pulled from that and you're going to take with you moving forward, as you're a professional in basketball and life?
I think, it's something that you had just mentioned, which is there's this really interesting thing with sports and basketball specifically about a balance between work ethic and like commitment to the game and all that and joy, because I think it's interesting. Like, we all start playing basketball because hopefully I think most people start because they love playing basketball and it's fun. And I was actually at St. Peter's Prep in Jersey City yesterday. I was one of the guys that one of the coaches that was in the TBT with me, he asked me to come talk to some of their campers. They had like a little kids camp, and I was like, of course I'll come talk. And I was just like watching these little kids play, and we're having so much fun. They're like bouncing off the walls, and like it's just everything looks so much fun compared to, I feel like, a lot of times as you get older, and it makes sense. Obviously, it becomes more serious and it becomes almost like a job. We lose some of that joy, I feel like, a little bit. And I'll never forget, my favorite part about playing in all those games is I would always take a moment at some point in the game to kind of just like look around and ground myself in the moment. I would look up at like our Colgate section, because we'd always has like a small section, and especially I remember the Wisconsin game. We played against Wisconsin in Milwaukee. So of course, whole place is Wisconsin fans, and then there's this little red section of Colgate fans. And I would always like just take a moment and kind of look up and just see, just experience, just live in the moment, just be there and be like, this is fun. Like I'm doing something that every kid dreams of. And I don't want to forget this moment. It's almost like I'm telling myself while I'm there, don't forget this. And so I think that, I don't know if I think that's something I talked to my dad about before those games. He would always say before most games, but specifically in those games, he'd be like, enjoy this, like live in the moment, remember this. Don't let it just pass you by, because every kid dreams of that. So I think that's something from those games specifically, is like the joy of basketball, of like just being on an environment like that, being on the court with these guys that I love, that I consider brothers, and just like enjoying it. Like I think out of all my Colgate games, those are the games where I like had a smile on my face the most. Like when we would go on a run, or whenever someone would hit a big shot, I would always be so jacked up, so excited, and try not to take it quite as seriously. Maybe that's just because we're the underdog and it's like not as much pressure on us, but that's kind of what I took from those games. I think the most is just really enjoying myself and having that fun passion for the game that started out my love for basketball.
Yeah. And it's amazing, right? You could take all those things from it, and the result of them is unfortunately not what you wanted. Right. But I think that's a great life lesson, right? It's not always about the result. It's always about the process, right?
Process over result, yeah.
Always, right? And people say this all the time, and it's like, it's cliche, but it's like, it's true. That's why it keeps getting recycled. And I remember watching those games. I was at, I remember where I was. I was always at my friend Kyle's house, right? And we're just watching the games, and I'm like, oh man, like these guys are gonna do it. But that moment for me, like I think was this year. At Perkiomen, we won the Pennsylvania Independent State title. And it was no, it's not even about that. But coming from Blair, my other 2 years we lost to Benedict's in the state final, right? So a little different because I changed schools, but right, like I felt, we were at St. Joe's, we beat a really good team by like 2 in overtime, and I just remember, because the school's never won a state title in the history of the school, so it was the first one ever. And the school, right, backs the basketball program a lot, and there's a lot that goes into it. So the whole school was there. We had our section, the parents, and, like obviously it's my first year, so I didn't really know too many people, but I was there enough where it's like, all right, this guy's okay. And then we won the game, and I just saw like everyone just running around, like nobody knew what was going on. Like, like neither did I. Like I felt like, Jimmy Valvano. Like, he's just running around. He's just running around looking to hug someone. Like that was literally me. Like my friend showed me a video, and then I'm running around, and my mom was there, right? And I just hugged my mom for like 20 seconds. And like, I say this all the time, in those 20 seconds, I was completely present. Like for 20 seconds, like there was a lot of stuff that went into that, right? Like COVID, me unfortunately getting sick, right? Like a decade of grinding in the coaching world, and for those 20 seconds it was just like, you know what I mean? And it's not about the result, but when you are able to get moments like that, I think that's what I'm trying to relay it to, right? Those moments are precious, right? Those moments are part of the reason why we're waking up and doing the 6 a.m. workouts. On my end, I'm watching film like a madman all throughout the whole year, and so much that goes into it. And we do it for the process. We do it for the love, but it's competition. So when we do get those moments, I feel like that's where you need to be the most still, because like you said, it's not guaranteed it's going to happen again.
Yeah.
So those 20 seconds where I'm just like holding my mom, who's been my biggest supporter ever, I'm just like, all right, this is deep. You know what I mean? And then obviously I go share my friends and the team, and then you wake up the next day and it's right back to work, So, but something else that I wanted to ask and talk to you about is, for people that aren't too familiar with the NCAA rules with COVID, I'll describe it quickly, right? college players that were in college during the COVID year were gifted another year of eligibility for free. So essentially you could go to school for 5 years, right? Obviously you decided to take that 5th year and stay at Colgate. But I think if you wanted to explain, maybe if you had opportunities to go to another program, right? Why did you stay? And more importantly, from a life perspective, right? What's the value in you making the decision to stay where you were?
Yeah, I mean, so during that time, the couple years after that COVID season, you would see whatever on Twitter or wherever that a lot of guys, especially from smaller conferences, for their 5th year, they would bet on themselves and take a shot and go play at a high major school, whether that's North Carolina or Wake Forest or Oklahoma, whatever it might be, for that 1 year, because it's kind of like college coaches almost will take a chance on a kid for 1 year. So a lot of guys who had successful careers at small colleges, they would have a lot of opportunities to go play somewhere bigger. And so obviously during my senior year, there was a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, but there were people kind of in my life and in my basketball life specifically that would kind of be asking me, what are you doing after the year? What are your plans? Especially even at the Colgate coaches at the time. It's almost like a new recruiting period. Like they have to recruit their own players to come back. So I would obviously be having conversations with Coach Langle, Coach Klatsky, my assistants, about, what I was thinking. And at some point it was like, I would say 2/3 of the way through my senior year, I really wanted to take a step back and think about what obviously the season was going on, but I was like, what am I really doing in my basketball career? What do I really play for? And what do I value most, in terms of building relationships, obviously getting things out of basketball, my teammates, these people that I consider like lifelong friends. So I took a step back. I obviously talked specifically to my family and some of the coaches and mentors in my life. And I made the decision to come back to Colgate for a 5th year and not even enter the transfer portal, not go through that process I was first team all league my senior year in the Patriot League. So if I had entered the portal, I definitely would have heard from a lot of schools, and there would have been kind of pitches, especially now with like name, image, and likeness and the money involved in college basketball. There would have been probably a lot of people on the phone. I'm assuming, don't know for sure, but from other people that I've talked to, that's kind of how it goes. Yeah, so, I made the decision not to go through that process and to come back and play another year at Colgate. And I'll talk a little bit about like why I made that decision. I think part of it was obviously I knew that personally I had an opportunity to come back and really kind of put my stamp on the Patriot League. Talking to Coach Langle, we kind of both knew that if I came back, I would most likely be preseason player of the year. Just if you looked at who was coming back, like what the kind of dynamics of the league were. So that was a little bit of part of it. I knew that if I came back, we would have another really good team. And I think I thought at the time that we would have a team that had another chance to win a championship and to have an opportunity to win a championship is super, super important to me. Like winning in college, if anybody asks about my Colgate career, the first thing I'll always say is like, we won. That was like, we were successful. We won games. It's not really about any of the accolades. It's like, we won 4 championships. That's the most important thing. So at the time I knew if I came back, we would have a really good team. And then there were other things like there at Colgate, they do this thing called the Sidekick program where college students, and doesn't have to be athletes, college students can kind of team up with a kid from like the local elementary school, and you're considered their sidekick. So you spend time with them, once every couple of weeks or however it goes. So at the end of my freshman year, I signed up for this program, not really knowing what to expect, kind of just thinking that it would be a cool thing to get into. And so I met this kid, Kevin, and we developed a really, really special bond and relationship. And like his family, I consider almost part of my family now. And so someone like that, like someone that you wouldn't really think of, really had an impact on my decision to come back to Colgate. It was like, this is a relationship that means a lot to me. This is a kid that I know I have an impact on his life. It has nothing to do with basketball. I know, like, obviously, most people would think that it's more important to get like $10,000 in the portal or whatever. Yep. But like for me, it was like, no, and obviously I'm I don't take for granted that I'm lucky to say that like money wasn't really like the most important thing for me, because I know in a lot of situations money can be super important, especially for college athletes. But so that's an example. I mean, the relationships I had built and like the alumni network at Colgate, I kind of thought that I didn't want to put any of that at risk, and like I didn't want to put those relationships. I wanted to make sure I was thinking through all these things that were important to me. So I think at the end of the day, to make a long story short, is like I guess it was kind of a sacrifice, because there was a chance I could have gone somewhere else and had a really good career, and maybe I would, or had a really good season, and it might have opened a few more doors basketball wise. But in terms of like my relationships on and off the court, that I had made at Colgate for those 4 years, like those were kind of more important to me at the time. And I'm so glad I made the decision. Obviously, hindsight's 2020, and we had a great year, and I individually had a pretty good year. But I think it was like the right decision. I think another thing is, I think a lot of kids have to take a second and think about what that situation on the other side could be. Like, the grass isn't always greener. You see a lot of situations where guys go somewhere and they really struggle and they don't play, and then it kind of actually hurts their basketball career, and they wish they might have stayed. So there's a lot of dimensions to this whole transfer portal thing in general that I could talk for so long about. I think it's really, really interesting what's happening to college basketball. But in my case, I think that it ended up being the right decision. And I'm glad I made that decision at the time.
Yeah. And right, like you said it best, right? And it's obviously easy to say this, but I'm really a firm believer in it. I think, happiness and purpose is much more fulfilling to you than how much money is in your wallet, right? Like, because the money can only bring you so far, right? And it's important to have it. We all work, we all need it. Like, I'm not downplaying it, but what I always say is, when you sacrifice the purpose and the happiness for the money, that's when you can start getting yourself into some trouble as far as just your soul. So, right, you made sacrifices. Maybe actually you didn't, but you could have potentially made a sacrifice, right, by staying, as far as, NIL stuff, whatever, opportunity stuff, right? But at the end of the day, from just hearing what you're saying, you're content and extremely happy with the decision that you made. You have zero regrets, right? And I'm a firm believer that as you get older, the less regrets you have, the better you can become, because regrets are like disease. They just grow and they eat at you. And next thing you know, you could become bitter when you're older. And I made a decision like that when I was 25. I was coaching at a public school, the one I went to. I felt pressure, like, I'm 26, like, I'm coaching and I'm working. I was working at a shoe store. So I'm like, what am I doing? I got offered a job in Denver to be a salesman for roofs, right? Like, it's like, all right, I got to just go be an adult, right? Like, and I did that for 2 years, and I like Denver, but as far as a job, it just wasn't for me, right? Like, I didn't love it. I didn't love it. And because of that, I started turning to negative things, because my identity has always been basketball, whether it's a player, and not really a player because I'm not very good. So more on the coaching side, right? Like, that's always been my identity. And I lost my identity for 2 years. So I, started going to Denver at nighttime and, doing that stuff, because I needed to have an identity, because I lost it and I was searching. So in a way, I sacrificed myself for a job and a paycheck, right? Because I was obviously making much more at the time doing that than the basketball stuff. So I luckily got a call from John DeJesus when I was out there, who was one of my best friends. Mm-hmm. And he said, hey man, we have a spot at Blair. If you want it, I can get it to you. I've never said anyone this, but he's like, it's not a full guarantee. You still have to meet Joe. Mm-hmm. So I was just like, you know what? I'm going to do it. So I drove home. I drove all the way from Denver to Pennsylvania in my van. And then I had a meeting with him without 100% even having the position at Blair before I got there. And then, Coach Mantegna was like, hey man, and I don't have a lot for you, but I was like, I just want to be a part, man. And then, I was lucky enough for them to say yes. And then the rest is now the path we're on. So I think I just relate a lot to what you said in my own, quirky way. I think it's very powerful.
And like everybody always says, like you literally only live your life one time. It's like, why would you spend your time? And it's like, it's so frustrating to me, especially going to an incredible school like Colgate, where a lot of people graduate from Colgate and go start doing jobs where you get paid a lot of money. And I talk to a lot of these people and they're just like not happy. And it's so frustrating to me. It's like you only live one life. Like, I don't understand why money is not, if money isn't bringing you fulfillment, then money shouldn't be your first priority. Like that, that doesn't make sense. If money is bringing you happiness, then okay, go do something where you're making a lot of money. But if you have another passion or something else that you want to be doing, it's like, just go do it. Like, you really only get one chance to be doing this. That's why. So I think that's such an admirable story. It's like you didn't know. It's like an unknown situation. You don't know what's going to come of it. But at the same time, it's like a gut thing. Like, this is the thing that you want to be doing. Like, you love this. It's like, okay, then go do it. Go figure it out. It's like life kind of usually figured itself out.
It does. And, I think back about it all the time. Right. And, I tell some of my family members at the time, that's what I'm doing. Right. And politely, skeptical, out of love, they called me an idiot. Like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't make any sense. You're coming back here. You have no job. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, I don't know, but I just know I have to do this. Like, that's it. I didn't know anything else except that I have to do it. And like you said, it was just a gut. And I'm a firm believer, right? When our soul and our minds is just telling us to do something, like, that's what we need to do. And right. A lot of people have different situations. A lot of people have families and stuff. They have more responsibilities. And what I always like to say is, like, so then make the job, right? And then have whatever you want to do on the side that makes you happy. It doesn't have to be what turns into to your life, but just do something that makes you happy, right? Some people, it's just like reading a book by themselves in a room like that. It's just like therapeutic. Like, I think we need to fill our souls with stuff that makes us happy, genuinely. Right. And me and you are lucky enough to have this orange ball that bounces for us. Right. But for other people, it's so many different things. And whatever that thing is, I just think it's so important to chase it and run to it, because there's just a light in you that just keeps like flashing and flashing when you're really doing what your purpose is. And obviously, you're doing your purpose. I'm trying to get better at mine every day, but it's always an uphill battle. So I guess, something else I wanted to ask you is, right, you had a goal when you were a kid, right? And, you achieved that goal, right? To be a college basketball player and to have a great career, right? Like, there's a lot of people that don't have the opportunity to complete a goal. And I just kind of wanted to know what is the mindset behind that? And also too, right, something I always say a lot, right? When you get to the top of one mountain, you're at the bottom of the other. So now you're turning the page, you're at the bottom of one, and then what's now next?
Yeah. No, I think it's so interesting. And I still think I had a pretty unique path in terms of basketball, meaning that when I was growing up, especially like eighth grade, freshman, sophomore year, high school, I didn't really understand what it meant to be like a good basketball player or a college basketball player. I think part of that was just where I grew up. There weren't that many high level basketball players. It was kind of rare around here to even be a college basketball player. So I didn't really like know what it meant to have like a mixtape or get offers or like be on a ranking or be on like a sponsored AAU team. Some of those things, my junior year, I was lucky enough to get on a sponsored team, but it wasn't something that I that I seeked out. It almost kind of like just happened. If that makes sense, I could tell a story, but I think that, so for me, like I said, because of like almost a lack of knowledge, I never had the mentality. I think a lot of people have this mentality, and I think this is great. This mentality that like there's someone else that's like working harder than me, so that's pushing me. That's what's pushing me to work harder. For me, it was never really that mentality. Like literally, if I'm being honest, the reason that I worked so hard at basketball was because I just loved it. I just loved playing basketball. I thought that I was just super dedicated to it because it was something that I really loved to do, and I it sounds cliche, but I really did love the work. Like I loved going and working out for hours and coming back and my body's tired and I'm exhausted and then getting up and doing it all again the next day. I just loved that. And it wasn't because I was like thinking about some other guy that's working harder than me. And so I think I was kind of almost lucky in that way. I was because I was a little bit naive with how the whole process worked. And yeah, so you're right. So I was able to achieve my goals. I guess my goal is to become a Division I basketball player, which again, it's hard to even say that was a goal because at the time I didn't even really know what that meant. Like that's what everybody says. Yeah. I want to be a Division I basketball player. But when I was younger and when I was even, like I said, freshman in high school, I didn't even know what that meant. but it happened because of kind of my circumstances and my work ethic, which I did have. And now you're right. Like, so I'm done at Colgate, and I'm lucky enough to be playing basketball professionally next year in Finland. So that's kind of going to be an interesting challenge. And you're completely right. I'm kind of at the bottom of the totem pole of the food chain over there. And I think I'm actually almost kind of excited to dive into that because, at Colgate as a freshman, I started as a freshman kind of right away. I kind of knew what my role was right away. And because of how I fit, how my role with that program and that team, I kind of always knew where I stood at Colgate. And this is going to be the first time in a long time where I really don't know. I have kind of no idea where I fit or what my role will be, or how it's going to test me, how the adversity that I'm most likely going to go through. And there's something, it's obviously there's anxiety coming with that, but there's also something a little bit exciting about that. And so I'm just going to continue to, do what I do, I guess, and be the person that I've become because of all these great people that I've been around, and hope that can take me far. So I think in terms of like a goal, what I always tell people at this stage of my life is I just want to keep playing basketball as long as I can play basketball, as long as it's sustainable for my body, for my mind, for obviously money does mean something right now. So as long as I can keep doing that, I want to be doing that. That's what I want to be doing. As long as I can continue to have my love for the game. And if there's a time when my love for playing basketball kind of goes away, I don't think I'm the type of person who's just going to keep chasing it for a paycheck. I think that, there are other things in my life that I feel like I'm pretty passionate about. And who knows, I could end up getting into coaching or getting into something else within the basketball world. So right now it's kind of like, I'm kind of had those blinders on. Like, I just want to grind and play basketball as long as I can. And I know, I mean, that it's obvious that won't last forever. And one day I'll be on to something else. And that's kind of exciting too. So I think it's cool to have like this next process and almost like a reset from Colgate to start this professional career.
Yeah, I think you said it best, right? There's adversity, you're basically beaming right toward it. And, I'm very corny with how I talk about adversity. I think it's very powerful if you use it the correct way. And it doesn't matter the size of the adversity, right? It doesn't matter the seriousness, right? But if you can go into an adverse or uncomfortable situation and you can just find the value in it, find the growth in it, find the perspective in it, there's just no possible way you can lose, because you're going to learn from it one way or the other, good or bad. You'll just find a lesson. And I think you're obviously about to put yourself in one of those situations, and you're guaranteed you're going to find a lot out about yourself. Like, obviously, I think you're going to do phenomenal, right? But either way, right, when you have a bad game, you'll learn from it. When you have a good game, you'll learn from it. But at the end of the day, you're chasing your purpose and your passion, and that's just very admirable. And I like to surround myself with people that do things like that, because when we talk about passion and destination, it's just like-minded. And, I appreciate you taking the time, to hop on here and chop it up, right? I'm hoping that people can find something from this. And obviously on Simple Talk, right, we like to keep it, pretty easy, man. So I appreciate you coming on, man. I'm rooting for you out there in Finland. If there's a stream, please send it, because I will be watching.
Of course. And I just want to say, like, I love listening to these and hearing people's stories, and obviously hearing more of your story. I think it's such a powerful message that you're spreading. It's like, even what you just said about being uncomfortable, it's something that I've really tried to do even this summer. And what I found is that, like, when you put yourself in uncomfortable situations, 8 or 9 times out of 10, it ends up going okay. It ends up being pretty good in the end. So it's like, that's why I'm happy that I've been able to, like, build a mindset and put myself out there more and more. And I think that more people should try and do that. So I think it's a great message that you're spreading.
Yeah, thanks, man. So I before I let you go, I stole that, right? One of my really good friends who is a general surgeon in Sacramento. Actually, they're moving to Jersey now. She made one of her, this is way above my head, but a doctor thesis thing. She played at Swarthmore. Very nice. Smart, right? Yeah. And her thing was, right, being comfortable, being uncomfortable, right? Yeah. And she talked about her experience. She's going to be on the podcast too. So her experience, right, in college, and how that shaped her to be a good surgeon, and just basically living in that uncomfortability every day and just thriving in it. And that's just something that I was blessed to find out in my very uncomfortable couple past years. And, you know, I now it's like you said, we're looking forward. All the stuff that just bothered us, right? It just was tools for growth, and now we're just going to keep pushing, man. But I appreciate you, and you know, we're obviously going to stay in touch. But this is Tucker Richardson, and this is Simple Talk. You guys have a good day. Appreciate you for listening.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.